you're the leader here. I'm following blindly.
That's all good. Yeah, I think it says live. So yeah, I'm here chatting with a dude who's got a channel called NoMoreDogma, and you're also called JM Dogma. Like, why have you got two names?
Yeah, JM is just my name.
Oh, right. Okay.
So yeah, people who know me, they call me JM. And that's not like an acronym to like hide my name. That is literally what people call me. Someone was asking me that, like, don't worry, I'm not
something like Johnny Boy, something like that.
Yeah, it's like James Michael.
Oh, okay, sweet, yeah. And so I guess first, like, an overview of like the kind of shit you get up to on your channel. Like, what's your channel all about? Like, what are you focused on? And you just passed 100 subscribers, which I guess to like people who have 200,000 or something, it's like nothing or whatever. But I mean, to us small fries, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
like,
that was huge. I was super excited about that because I think I said this in some video, and it was like, I have been told many times, like, stop talking about, religion or politics. I don't want to hear about it anymore. And so I just kind of like, still wanted to study it myself and just uploaded a few videos on my take on a few things. And I don't know, got more feedback on it than I thought I would. And so just kind of continued doing it. I like to, I guess, stay in topics that I know about. And that keeps me away from the feminist stuff, which I enjoy, listening to, but I don't feel like I know enough about it to really give much of my own opinion on it.
Yeah, and the area you reckon you know about is like atheist issues.
Yeah, I've been a long-time atheist.
Yeah, and you're kind of like a Devin Tracy fan and that kind of shit, and other people.
Yeah, I like Sam Harris a lot. Okay, so I guess it started back then. I mean, I was, Harris fan. I was, Christopher Hitchens and all that. I read their books. I really like Dan Dennett, but he's kind of fallen off the map a little bit. He's not really in the limelight anymore. So him and Harris were your favorites.
Oh, sorry. I always thought Daniel Dennett was like, there's the four horsemen. So it's like Hitchens, Harris, Dawkins, Dennett. That Dennett was the guy who was the least bombastic, and he just seems to get involved in the fewest controversies. So everyone forgot about him.
Yeah, what I liked about him is I read their books, and his book was like from this psych perspective, and that's what I do. I'm a psych guy, and so it was just I related to it a lot more. It was just kind of like how religion, what it does for people, in their head, comforts them, and so forth. And so I really liked him. But yeah, he didn't have any controversies, so kind of no one paid attention, I guess. Yeah. Maybe he had his own reasons. Maybe he's on to bigger and better things in his own life, hopefully.
Well, he lines up behind all the big atheist causes, though. He just doesn't do it in a bombastic way. He just does it like all in the background. So like Dawkins and Harris are like fucking getting into the mosh pit with everybody. And then it's just like doop-a-doop-doo in the background.
And that's what I liked about, you were saying, like Devin Tracy. It was just like that guy. Oh my goodness.
Well, he just gets into the fray.
Oh yeah. He is definitely a fan, it seems, of controversy. And so, it's always fun to watch.
Right. But did you feel like you were stuck between two camps? Because there's the whole like doxing war shit going on.
Yeah.
And you're basically like, you're not really in the bad books with anybody. You're just sort of chilling out in your own space.
Because I'll say, basically, I don't like the doxing. I don't see any valid argument for it. I did a video, but it really had little to do with that specific situation. It was just more, here was a case of Rebecca Watson, actually, who I don't find myself agreeing with very often. And her case was like, imagine somebody's just not leaving you alone. Like, what else can you do? But when it came to the doxing in that particular case, I didn't like the behavior. At the same time, I kind of saw like an anti-AIU thing forming up, and I just didn't feel strongly enough one way or the other about it. It wasn't like, oh, I hate Devin Tracy. I didn't feel like that. And at the same time, I was like, but I don't like what he does. And so,
I'm a just pathetic liberal softie. So like, I don't hate anybody.
Yeah.
The only reason, I mean, I got like, it's kind of a cop out to like get on that train because the guy fucked with me, but like he fucked with me and he sent all his cronies to like bully me. So then I was just like, fuck that guy then, because
Yeah.
I guess if you was that.
I would feel differently if that happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in his crosshairs, but if he, you know, if you're not in his crosshairs, it's just like, okay, the guy's a bit of a douche. He's just doing his thing, whatever. I don't really care.
And that was kind of the way I felt, was like, if I know that that's the, you know, I'm gonna even take him out of the situation. If I were to say, if anybody were to be that way, you know, it's just like, I'm not gonna provoke that. You know, I'm not gonna like start attacking this person because I know that they react badly. You know,
Yeah.
it's like,
well, I mean, yeah, that's why they're flying monkeys. Flying monkey get sent by the evil witch to like harass, murder, and kill people. So,
and I saw that argument a lot. Where, you know, I heard that it was kind of like, you know, so and so, this you know, AIU fan did this really terrible thing, and I felt bad. Like, it was like, yeah, that's horrible. You know, I don't know what I would do in that situation. And it's like, I wondered how much of it was, you know, Devin actually saying, hey, go do this thing, you know, go do this thing for me. I don't know. And honestly, when that really first started coming up, I was just starting to like make videos myself. So I didn't, you know, a lot of people were telling me these backstories, and it was stuff that happened before I'd even gotten on the scene.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't buy the idea that somebody can't influence their own followers. Like, people are always like, oh, what can I do? I can't control my followers or whatever. And but no one's asking them to be controlled, just for you to just send out a tweet saying, hey, like, leave people who disagree with us alone. Like, stop harassing them. That's in your power. You can do that, you know.
With my minimal number of subscribers, if somebody in my name was doing something that was just horrible, I would say, hey, listen, if somebody's doing this because of me, if they're doing this and saying it's because they're a fan of mine, you know, they can unsubscribe. You know, fuck you, you're not a part of my team if that's the way you're going to act. I mean, that's how I personally would handle that. And so that's like you were saying, it kind of put me in the spot where, like, you know what, I still like the guy's material. I think he's funny. I agree with a lot of his points. I don't like the doxing aspect thing.
That's the part, that's the part that I don't respect, is like, you can influence your followers to be less shitty. Like, that's totally in your power. But as far as like content and shit, I don't know. I don't really watch it. It's just him, I don't know, getting some person and tearing them apart or about something. But yeah, I think you just liked one of his videos about, but what was that about? Just today, I just saw it on the Twitter machine.
I sent the one to Russell Glasser. Oh, and I hate, I cannot stand the atheist experience. And that, I know a lot of people.
That's the one. Yeah.
And man, for a long time, I have not liked them. You know, they were like, okay, when I was, you know, that back in the day, it was kind of Christianity was the easy thing to attack, and it was fun, and it still is. It still is like stupid, and in America, a lot of Christians are trying to push it. Yeah, and so it's
not challenging.
No, yeah, and so I understand why a lot of people really like them, but now these new topics are coming about that are a lot harder to deal with, and I don't know. I don't like their stance on them, and I saw this a long time ago. The one that I was looking at was the Islam topic. But even I'll say there was a few years ago, Matt Dillahunty and I had a little back and forth on the free will argument. And
on Twitter?
No, it was just email. And it was like, man, I do not agree with you. Like, you're not, just in my opinion, I mean, it was a long back and forth, but we disagreed. And it got, I don't want to say ugly, but it certainly wasn't friendly.
Well, the thing about Matt Dillahunty is I feel like he can get pretty snippy when he disagrees with you, because I had an exchange with him because he was like talking about guns, and he was saying, well, all my friends are responsible gun owners, and, you know, guns are all good. I'm from Texas. And then I was like, well, maybe you're a bit biased because you're from Texas and all the people you know are responsible gun owners. Maybe if you knew some irresponsible gun owners, it would change your opinion. And then he just got snippy about it, and he just got kind of pissed off.
And everybody's a responsible gun owner until they're not. You know, that's kind of how I always think of that
Well,
argument.
America is a very, very, very big country. So you could conceivably live in Texas and never meet anybody who had an issue with guns. That doesn't mean in some state somewhere else someone's not getting shot right now.
Yeah,
They are. Yeah.
And
You just can't see it.
that's a huge problem with America all around. It's huge. It's a huge country. I live in like the Appalachian area, okay? And it's like what might serve this little community that I live in is just, miles away, from this other community. And it's just like these two would not serve well under the same laws or, ideas or rules. Considering that from California to New York, oh my God, there's just so many different cultures in there. And it's just, that problem comes up a lot where it's...
Well, it's probably, it's the kind of country where you could probably grow up and never see the ocean. So that's...
Oh, yeah.
I'm from New Zealand. You can't do that. I'm just Hobbiton, whatever. The ocean's right there.
But I know a lot of people who haven't seen. I live in like the northern area, so it's like a lot of people haven't seen the ocean, and then I know some people from down south, and it's like they've never seen snow. You know what I mean? And you live in a country that has all of that, and I almost kind of think of it as like Europe. Each state is a different country.
Yeah,
and so it's
and also for all of us like Western liberals going on and on about Islam, etc. A lot of those problems are across the sea somewhere, kind of far away.
Yes. Yeah. I have a few videos on Islam, but I don't feel like it is something so close to my existence that I need to speak on very much. I don't know much about it. For me to go off and say, fuck Islam all the time. It's like, who am I talking to? There's nobody in my town that's a Muslim, Yeah, it's just not relevant to me, so I don't know much about it, and I don't, if I knew more about it, I'd talk about it.
Well, the only real interaction my country's had with is we've sent troops to Iraq, and there's news stories about how they're training Iraqi troops, and then occasionally the Iraqi troop will turn on them and stab them or something. So they've got to be real careful. But besides that, they're just hanging out training the Iraqis. And also we just got we're getting about 800 refugees, Syrian refugees.
Nice.
And people were like, oh, if you like the refugees, why don't you put them up in your house? And why don't you put them on your couch and shit? I'm like, why do you think we pay taxes? So we can support them. Doesn't mean I have to put them in my house, but would I? Sure. If I had a place to put them, but I don't.
And I've seen a lot of those stories with Sweden and Cologne and the UK, Canada, which is right above us. They're taking in a lot of refugees, and I was talking to someone that lives in Canada, and they were saying that like the vetting process that they're going through up there is like super strict, and they're really only letting in like women and children, and the men will have to figure something out later. And it's kind of like, okay, there's a way to deal with that, and that's fine with me. Hopefully. But having a son, that's kind of where I start to worry. It's just kind of like, I hope, I'm keeping my eye on things, hoping that everything's okay 10 years from now, 15 years from now.
Well, what would your concern be? Like, what are you worried about?
Mainly, I watched this, oh man, I don't know where I saw it. It was on YouTube, but I forget who it was. And they were talking about the UK and these like mosques that were in the UK. This woman went back to her hometown and found that like these mosques had formed these really big groups and just were, kind of doing these rallies in the streets and really pushing for a lot of legislation. And then they stopped the ability of the government to show any kind of statistics on what the Muslim population believed in and what they wanted to do, and then it was even worse in Sweden. And it's kind of like, okay, that would be a problem. But again, I really have a hard time, I guess, I don't know, demonizing like every single person because of those things.
Yeah, sorry, you're cutting out a bit, but yeah, where was this?
It was in the UK and Sweden, Sweden especially, but the UK was kind of like the next place they were going.
Wait, and is this being caused by migrants or?
Yes. Well, migrants / like, I don't know if they were all migrants, but it was just
asylum.
Yeah, yeah, like the Muslim population, and then the migrants coming in and kind of hooking up with those like groups.
I find that like this is a kind of like useless assessment because everybody always thinks they know everything, but I don't know what the fuck's going on there.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean,
I mean, I don't know if it's completely exaggerated and just a load of bollocks and whatever, it's just propaganda, or if
yeah,
it's a real problem and there's actually something dodgy going on. But I mean, for example, in New York, I know that the police kept all of these mosques under surveillance and they didn't find shit, but I guess they weren't dealing with the recent asylum seekers, so maybe it would be different. I don't know.
yeah, and that's exactly, you're
It's hard
exactly
to tell. Fuck.
I don't know. That's why like I say, it's like my opinion on it is very flimsy because it's just not well informed. And there's like an example of that Harris conversation. I forget who he was talking to recently. Maryam, something like that.
Right. Oh, before we go on to that though, I just want to ask again, why atheist experience are regressive. I was just still curious about that.
Well, so what I liked about it, and what I personally I won't deny, is that I live in a very Christian country, and I see very fundamental Christians, like these, no gays, so on and so forth, conservative Christians. But for as nutty as they are, like, they're not killing anybody, and that is something that, I mean, even if it is just in the Middle East and it's now spreading into the West, and it's happened in America, quite a few times. It's like that is happening, whether it's, it's not all Muslims, it's not all so on and so forth, but it definitely is an outlier in terms of like religious fanaticism, the death by religion or by religious ideology. And so it's kind of like we are not allowed to recognize that. And so this guy called into the atheist experience and he was like, what do you think about this basically? What do you think about these, the migrants coming in, and along with that, the rape statistics start going up like crazy, and, we're seeing this. And it was just the whole, all religion's bad. We're against all religion. And it's kind of like, yes, so am I. But I do notice that one religion right now is way more violent, way more, I don't know, just barbaric than the others.
The caller was saying that.
Yeah, well, the caller was kind of pressing them on this, and they just kind of kept deflecting to other, situations that were going on.
Oh, you mean the atheist experience kept deflecting? Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, people see comparing to other religions as some kind of false equivalence. Like there's something special, like especially violent about Islam, and I think that is true, but not fully in a religious sense. It's partly to do with that these countries are fucked up, and part of the reason they're fucked up is religion, and then there's a whole bunch of other reasons why they're fucked up. So, I mean, if these countries were wonderful, beautiful countries, and with a really high standard of living, I mean, there'd still be, I don't know, there'd still be a bunch of fundamentalists somewhere, but I don't think we'd see this kind of violence because they'd feel happy with their lives. I mean, I don't know if that sounds naive to people who have a big issue with, Islam, the religion, being much more important.
Yeah, no, you're right. Because, I mean, like you were saying, in New York, I have a cousin in New York, and, she tells me.
That doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, sorry. I used to have a Muslim guy that lived above me when I lived in the city. He was an awesome dude. He bring me like this juice, this like, I don't know, some sort of like Middle Eastern juice. It was delicious. Him and I used to chat, and he was an awesome guy. But would you, with that in mind, like you said, it's the culture in those areas. And even if you were a Christian or atheist in that area, you might think, growing up and seeing this sort of treatment of, let's say, women or gays, even if you weren't the religious fundamentalists, it might at least become more familiar and more of a normal thing. So should we still be worried about people who even aren't Muslim, but coming from those areas?
I think, well, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but it does remind me partly of like really hardcore conservatives who are like, you know, we have to tell women what to do. Fuck, what other things do they believe? Like obsessed with having guns. They're hardcore Christians. They're not like exactly the same as Muslims, but I think part of the problem is conservatism. Like religious conservatism in Islam leads to those kind of radical interpretations, and then you grow up surrounded by people who have this conservative point of view, and that happens in, you know, parts of America too. People grow up thinking, oh, evolution is fake, and there's no such thing as evolution, and abortion is murder, and, you know, have these ridiculous conservative points of view. But, you know, that, I guess that overlaps with the religion, doesn't it?
Yes,
So,
and that's something that I guess that gets me. It's like I'm seeing like this, and I don't think I'm the first one, but this kind of new wing of the liberal party, and they're kind of like standing up for the people who hold super conservative, I mean, more conservative viewpoints than a lot of the mainstream conservatives that we would know in America, you know.
I mean,
like you said, standing up for the same exact things. And it's just like, I mean, I understand defending the people, but you're also kind of you know, not by default, but, you know, almost, you know,
by omission. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess by like, I don't know, in the same, by doing that, you are also defending the ideas. Okay, they're bringing the ideas with them. They're people with these ideas, and so it's like, should we?
But all that's bad. I mean, I don't know many people who actively promote that. Like, people say we want to really respect the religion and like religious freedom and protect them and all this kind of stuff, but I don't see liberals saying. I mean, have you seen liberals saying? They say we have to respect that they wear the hijab, but they don't say, you know, I think it's great when they beat their wife. I think it's great when they force them to wear the hijab, and I think it's really important that women don't have rights and stuff. Like, I haven't seen anyone advocate for that, so I thought it might be a sin of omission or overlooking rather than an advocacy.
I don't see him like, definitely don't see him advocating for it. But I don't see him condemning it either. Like, when it happens, and it's just kind of like I said, with the with the atheist experience, that whole thing. And that's kind of what it was. It was like they definitely weren't advocating for it, but it was like they were purposely missing it at the same time, you know, when it's kind of like, oh, but look at those people who are also messed up, and these people who are also messed up. It's kind of like, yeah, I agree, those people are messed up, but so are the original guys that we were talking about there. And I like the idea that we can hopefully focus on more than one thing at a time, you know, with that kind of thing.
But how do you account for all of those militia groups, like what are they called, Posse Comitatus and the Minutemen and all of those southern groups that want to basically secede from the United States, and they're hardcore Christian, really redneck.
They're total dickheads. I
think that would be like America's homegrown kind of jihadis in a sense.
Yeah. I don't see, like, the difference I see with them, I would say, is just simply in the, you know, like, you know, the body count. You know, they're definitely not hurting as many people, but yeah, like when the Oregon standoff situation happened, that's something that I talked about, and it was like, you know, I don't know how anybody could not call this terrorism, you know, just by definition. I don't look at it as nearly the same as suicide bombings and, you know, the constant murders we're seeing coming out of, you know, the Middle East right now. But at the same time, they are threatening violence based on an ideology, you know, and so I don't know what other term there is for that.
Well, I mean, in America itself, there's been a few bits and pieces. There was that Muslim couple who did that shooting, and then there was like the Fort Hood shooter, there was the shoe bomber, there was a few other people. But I mean, they haven't really managed to get to the United States again, have they? But I mean, obviously that's the grand prize. Like, that's what they want to do. But
there's definitely not as much of it here, and that's something that I think definitely happens here.
Thanks to George Bush. No.
All thanks to him, and being that we don't see as often, it's not, you know, it's definitely not as big of a problem here. Same with, honestly, you could look at that, like climate change, for example. Like, other countries are seeing the effects of climate change like crazy. And to them, there's no doubt they need to do something about it right now. In America, we've got more tornadoes, and hurricane season's a little worse. That's about it. And so in the same way, it's kind of like, well, should we start working on the problem now, or should we, let, refugees in and migrants in, and then once it actually becomes a big problem, then should we deal with it? And that's a hard question, because I see the pictures, like the guy with his son and his kids in his arms, and he's crying. It's like, man, I want those people to get help. I just think we need to think that through, pretty well before we dive in.
Well, this is like probably above your pay grade and mine, but what would your solution be in regards to the situation? Because I've said on my own channel that I think the best thing is getting as much education to as many people as possible. And I think that's the best solution. I don't think it's bombing, and I don't think it's like Obama's called it like whack-a-mole, like you just go in there and you kill random terrorists and then they keep popping up again and then you kill them again.
That's not
that can go on forever.
Yeah, that's definitely not working. I saw, one guy, his name's like Stefan Molyneux, and I don't like what he says. Yeah, I don't enjoy much of what he says. But he had this thing in terms of like, well, if we're looking at just money, relocating them to different areas in the Middle East was one idea, but I don't know how much I trust that guy. But I think that Canada, I
thought the Middle Eastern countries didn't want them. They were like, we don't want refugees.
Yeah, you're right. I saw that. So that would be a way to nix that idea. But someone that I was talking to, I don't want to give her name out. She was saying, she's from Canada, and she was saying like that the way they were doing it, like I was saying earlier, was by just kind of at first taking in the women and children and kind of playing it from there. And they've done this so far. No problems have happened so far. And it's kind of like, okay, let's take it slow, try to focus more on families than, I think that young single men are the bane of existence for the world. In the best, not all. Hashtag not all. But no,
that was misandrist.
It's definitely young men that kind of do the killing most of the time.
It's sexist.
So, families. Oh, it is. It certainly is.
But I mean, my question was more, how the fuck do you fix the Middle East?
Oh shit!
I would have thought it would be doing the best you can to actually make them into not shit countries.
Yeah. Honestly, I have no idea. I don't know that there is like a quick fix to that. I was talking to because he was schooling me on this, and it was like, dudes, taking someone out of power over there just creates this vacuum, and these nutballs rise up, and.
It's difficult because Iraq proved that you can't just go in and give them democracy and it just works like that, because they also need a sense of autonomy, and they felt like America was pulling the strings. So they just felt like they were puppets, and that it was like imperialism. These people are coming over, trying to take over our country. We don't fucking like it. We're going to resist them.
Oh, no.
You have to...
if someone came in and told me this is how you're going to do things from now on, you're like, who the fuck are you? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not.
Fuck, especially in America.
Yeah,
everyone
right.
grab their guns and go fucking to town and go crazy.
So no, I totally agree with you. I think that's obviously, too bad we had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah. But I think giving them economic security and democracy works in theory. But you also have to provide that sense of self-determination and autonomy, and somehow juggle all of these different sects that don't like each other and different religious groups.
Yes, and that's been going on
for so long. What's that?
I said, and that's been going on for just like so long now. The civil war aspect of that region, the Sunnis, the Shia, that infighting with that, and it's. Like, how would you ever make that go away? I mean,
that's why some people are like, America should just, like the Ron Paul approach, just get the fuck out. Like, how do you feel about that?
And you know what, like I think just kind of like with the Iraq situation, there's really no way to know how that's going to play out. I don't think anybody could just totally predict like this is going to be the right solution. You know,
I thought that the main problem there was the autonomy, because I mix up the Sunni Shia stuff, but like Saddam was, which one was he again? Was he Shia?
Oh,
I think
I can't.
yeah. Okay, someone can correct me later, but I think he was Shia or Sunni. I think he was Shia. But then they got rid of him, and then they put in a prime minister, Maliki, who was the other sect, like Sunni, whatever. Wikipedia will help me later, but you know. And then all of the Shia were like, "Oh, okay, so it's like a religious war now because you're just getting rid of someone who represented us, and we don't like that, so now we're gonna fucking try and overthrow the government." It's like, oh, great.
I imagine that like some sort of reformation will occur one day. But I mean, look how long it took the Catholic Church. Shit.
But when you think about Christianity, a lot of people haven't even undergone the Reformation. Like a decent chunk of people have, but there are still those dudes in the fucking desert with their guns and
and there always, I think there always will be just nutcases out there based on whatever it will be. But yeah, I mean that's like I was saying, that's why I don't really get into that as much. I wish I could, to be honest, but I just don't know enough about it to completely say, you know, this is how I stand on this situation. I can say like I don't agree with Islam in any sort of way. I look at it as having terrible teachings. I say that about really any religion, but right now Islam in particular. But in terms of just the shit that we actually have to do right now, I have no clue. I have no clue about it.
Well, I mean, I think the solution is going to be economic, and it's going to be based on education. But I also know that implementing that is a ongoing clusterfuck, which we can't really seem to figure out. But I don't think it's going to be just bombing everybody. Maybe the solution is to just nuke the Middle East. But unfortunately, I think Israel is nearby, so they'll probably die too.
Yeah, and that would cause a whole bunch of people to get upset.
Yeah, and many people will die. That would be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, the children are already kind of learning the things that they're learning, which are harmful. I mean, so the next that generation's gonna have a hard time, getting out of that. So, it's in my eyes, it's always about helping the next generation. The next generation will be the one that.
That's how it always works. Like, you guys will figure it out. Just pass it to the next people.
Or at least help the kids, and if we can help.
We really fucked it up this time. You guys, good luck.
Yeah, it's like when you have something to do that sucks. It's like, future me will take care of this.
Yeah, that's true. They're always saying that in the presidential debates. Like, this will be the first generation that inherits a shittier America.
Oh, dude, this whole thing. Oh my God.
People have such a idealistic or over-exaggerated view of what's going on now, because stuff was real shit 60 years ago too. Do you know Steven Pinker?
I've heard the name. I can't say I know a lot about him. I
always fuck up the name of his book, but it's something like The Better Demons of Our Angels or something. And he's basically an optimist. He's talking about how everything has improved. Unless, I guess, climate change is true and kills us all, but I don't know what he says about that. But war has gone down, crime's gone down, everything's slowly getting better. And he's talking about how the media basically has this narrative that makes everything look worse.
Oh, yeah, that definitely sells. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, but Pinker, he's in not your, but in the crowd of the atheist people. He's part of that whole area, but he's also an optimist.
Yeah, I'm definitely not the optimistic type. I can say that.
He's an optimist based on actual facts and figures. Because he's a scientist as well, so he lays out his case.
I do think that, for example, in America, it's where I live. That's what I know the most about. In terms of a lot of the issues that we used to face, I mean, and not even so long ago, just in the 70s and so forth, in terms of black and white, in terms of gay, in terms of gender, I think things have gotten a lot better, even in my own lifetime. And that's something that's definitely, so I guess if you were asking me, what are a lot of my videos about, I do a lot on like race and like racial tensions and Black Lives Matter. Yeah, the BuzzFeed, and then I've done a few where it was kind of like
I find BuzzFeed unbearable, to be honest. But
yeah, it's I mean, that thing's a treasure trove if you're looking for just a video to take apart and point out how dumb it is.
Yeah.
And but that's what I do a lot of, and that's kind of, I work in that, I don't want to say like the Black community, but I work in like the community. It's kind of what I do. And there are sociological factors that definitely play in. However, it's anytime I've ever talked to anybody, it's like their own personal decisions have kind of gotten them where they are. Nobody's ever said, oh, I got arrested, with an ounce of weed on me because of, slavery, or anything like that. It was, it's never been like that. So it's kind of like I see the sociological factors, but at the same time, I see the personal accountability as well. And it's a matter.
The way I think about it is, do you think it's a fluke, or it's just something to do with the nature of Black people, that they live in poor neighborhoods and there's more crime and stuff? I think that the legacy of slavery is such a long-lasting slavery. Long-lasting slavery, that doesn't make sense. Long-lasting thing over so many generations that you can no longer see that it's an influence, but it's basically, it's made the landscape what it is today. Yeah, and it's just perpetuated. That's the way I feel.
And not even just that, because I hate when people are like, oh, you're going back 200 years. It's like, let's not even take it that far back. Let's just look at the 60s and 70s and Jim Crow era and so forth. And it's just like segregation, legal discrimination, and things like that. And it's kind of like, like that has
kind of ripples across generations. At a certain point, like something is so small with human eye can't see it anymore. We can't even like detect it. We don't even know that it's there anymore. So it's quite easy to say, well, slavery's over. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
But it's like it's not a fluke that African Americans live where they do, in
not at all.
The conditions that they live in. That does have something to do with slavery. It's just like it took generations for that effect. And even
like gentrification, just like them taking an area that's kind of poor and run down and making it nice, which increases rent and everything, and it kind of kicks people out, and
then the Black people get kicked out, right?
And then so
they go to some shitty area and everyone's like, oh great, look who's moving in.
Yeah And like a lot of the issues I'd say that I talk about are that, and it's kind of like as sympathetic to that as I am. I don't think that that's just like this one side fixes it and another doesn't. So an interesting kind of like story on that is in 1992 in LA with the Rodney King, video. He was getting beaten up like crazy. And there was these LA riots. They went, it was insane. And this is kind of where the Crips came from and how they really got shown up. They got brought up in America, and they were there to protect the community. So the police, this might be a myth, but something I saw somewhere, and it was like the gangs, the Bloods and the Crips actually came together, and there's these pictures, and it's like the red and the blue bandanas tied together, and they had this idea, they came to an understanding with the police, and it was like, okay, like we're going to stop this, we're going to put an end to the riots and the fires and so forth. And it was actually the police who dropped the ball on that, and it just went right back to shit. And so it's kind of like, well, that sucks, and I think it would take that sort of cooperative effort in order to make that better. So I don't like seeing it where it's just kind of like white people are bad, white cops are bad. I don't like that. At the same time, I don't necessarily like, Black people are bad. I don't think Black people are any less intelligent, any less capable. They're human beings. They're just as brilliant as the rest of us, And so I hold them to the same standard, I guess you could say. And it's just kind of like, we just need to figure out, where some of the outlier problems are, single parent households being one of them. So how can we deal with single parent households, or make kids in single parent households get better educations and things like that?
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, people, take issue with bringing up slavery, but I mean, have you really seen very many people say, I did A and B because of slavery? Like, oh, I just went out and stole a car because of slavery. Like, I've never heard anyone say something like that.
Never, never. And that's kind of where my issue comes in with that, is anyone I've ever talked to that's, you know, I don't know, committed some crime. It's always, and that might be anecdotal, but it's always been, you know, I was in this situation. It was easier to make money this way. It was whatever purpose they had for doing it.
Yeah.
So,
well, but it is kind of like, why is a white kid who lives in a gentrified neighborhood and goes to a really great school and I don't know, has a like beautiful blonde girlfriend and a fucking Corvette, some shit. I don't know anything about cars, but whatever. Like, how come he's never really got in trouble, but this other kid who's living in a shithole of a place with like shitty parents and it's just a fucking dump and his school is garbage and he's not really learning anything and he's getting into drugs and stuff. Like, is it just a fluke that this kid lives a great life and this kid lives a shit life?
Yeah, I mean,
it's not a fluke. There's reasons.
Yeah, then take like the thousands of kids like the one and the thousands of kids like the other, and see that
exactly.
You know, they stack up. You know, most certainly.
Yeah, and then that shittiness just gets passed on to the next generation unless something comes in and breaks the cycle, like somebody gets a scholarship or like somebody gets a leg up in some way, or someone gets a really good teacher who kind of helps them. Or
yeah, most certainly. And when that happens, it's great. You know what I mean? Like it's a wonderful thing, but it's just not going to happen at the same level of success that you're going to have with the, you know, the upper middle class suburban kid. You know,
well,
like
that needs to be a priority for society. Unless society decides that that's really important and they want to invest in that, then it, like, of course, there's always outliers, as we both know that. So there's still going to be kids committing crimes. But the whole point is that you try to reduce it. It's not that you can't really eliminate like human nature, like not black people nature, not white people nature, but like humans are still going to do shitty things. Yeah. Even some rich kids are going to do some shit things.
Oh yeah, some of the worst.
Yeah, exactly.
And that was something. So like that, there's like a thing with me that I kind of get that will kind of bother me. Like for example, with like Black Lives Matter. Like when I first saw them popping up on the scene with Mike Brown, and it was kind of like, even if Mike Brown, and I do think the guy was like reaching for the gun, the cop was just doing his job in my perspective.
I just try to stay out of all that shit because
I know. I do as much as I can, but it's just like that. That was my take on it. But even if that's the case, I was still sympathetic to Black Lives Matter. It was kind of like, you know what? Even if that particular case was wrong or whatever, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. It was a bad case to start with. I still agree that we should be watching police and kind of holding them to the highest standard. If somebody dies in a police encounter, we should definitely have like a third-party investigation, keeping everybody honest. But then it just seemed to kind of devolve into them picking apart every little situation, finding some problem. Look at like Ms. U, and it's just like, oh my goodness. Okay, so the guy didn't react strongly enough to some kid getting like yelled at, from a passing truck that wasn't even on campus. And now we've got like a president of a college being fired or resigning because someone's feelings got hurt. And it's just kind of like, okay, now you're losing my sympathy.
Well, but to me, this is a word that often comes to my mind, is optics, which is when something looks bad, you basically turn against it. But it doesn't mean that thing is bad. It just means it's sort of soured in your mind. And now when you think of it, you have sort of negative connotation, and that kind of like affects the way you see their future actions. You're like, oh, it's Black Lives Matter again. Oh god.
Oh, definitely will. You are correct about that. And I wish that was like something I was like thinking was like, I wish they would focus on some of the things we've talked about, just about, I don't know, gentrifying or single parent households or something real. It's like focus your efforts in those specific places.
Oh, I mean, but of course, them being shot by cops is real.
Oh yeah,
it's a real thing. We have disagreements about why that. I mean, some people, well, not some people, lots of people have just disagreements about why that's happening. But that is a discussion. That's something that's going on. People are like, why are black people being shot so much by the cops? That's just the question.
My take is not probably a popular, and I don't look at, for sure. Once again, I think it's always a tragedy, and I don't ever like hearing that somebody's died or anything like that. I think also at the same time, though, it's like if you're in any city across, I'd say the world, but let's just say America, the place that you go if you want, to buy a prostitute or get drugs or anything, you go to the downtown area. You go to the area that's urban, quote unquote, and so
Dog whistle.
yeah, I mean that's where the crime, that's where the criminal activity. And so that's where most of the cops are. That's where most of the cops are engaging with criminals. And it just so happens at the same time to be the place where a lot of Black people are grouped together. I don't think that's an inherent trait. And I think that a lot of, mistakes are made by any policeman, person, group of people. So, when I see that, it's like, yeah, there was a guy that was shot. He was handcuffed and he was shot like 12 times. And that, I thought that was total bullshit. The cop should and was tried for murder. And
yeah,
absolutely the right response. And I think Black Lives Matter had a huge hand to play in actually shining that spotlight on them, and making that like a more national story, and making sure cops were being held accountable, because they didn't release that footage for like a year or two or something like that.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, they're always incredibly reluctant to produce evidence or information about things that have happened. And that definitely smacks of some kind of cover-up, whether or not there is.
Yeah. And that was an area where it was like, okay, good for Black Lives Matter in that situation. And but like you said, I definitely will tend to be biased towards them after seeing some of the stuff that I've seen.
Right.
But
well, I mean, I was on a hangout a couple of weeks ago, and there was a cop dude on that, and he was talking about this whole situation, and he was like really against Black Lives Matter. But the impression I got from just listening to him talk was that cops feel really, well, not scared, but like really they have heightened senses when they're out there, because they feel like threats could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that that's probably not good for policing, to be walking around being like, fuck, I could get killed at any time, and that guy could have a gun, this guy could have a gun. It creates like this like tinderbox atmosphere where violence can break out at just about any time.
Oh yeah, most certainly. And I mean, but like living in America where guns are super prevalent, like how could you avoid feeling that way? When it's your job, if something
So,
does
I mean,
come down.
gun control would probably help the cops a lot.
Oh yeah, I agree.
If it was effective.
But I agree.
You what?
I said I don't see it happening. I don't see any gun legislation going through.
Yeah.
But I can, but what I guess I'm saying is like how I don't see how a cop could really feel less nervous, in any of those situations. Just.
But that's partly a matter of police conduct, and by conduct I don't mean, their abusive tendencies or whatever in those situations where they've been found to be abusive, but I mean how they approach a situation. Like if they approach it really like nervous and scared and like wanting to reach for their gun, things can escalate quickly. But there was also a video of cops arresting this dude, and it just seemed like a real casual situation, and the guy suddenly pulled out a gun and popped the cop in the head and just ran off.
Yeah.
So there's also dangerous situations. So that balance between wanting to reach for your own gun and deal with the situation, if it seems like it's getting out of hand, and being cautious and not escalating, is one that I think the cops haven't really reached in America. Like, I think they're probably going too far in the direction of we're just really worried about our well-being and our safety to like an extreme degree.
How do you think that could be changed? Because I mean, like living in the city that I live in, I'd say if I were a cop and like right now, if I got called, hey, come down to 4th Street, like I would be nervous. It'd be like, oh shit,
yeah,
like, okay, we gotta deal with this right now. My wife would likely be like, oh my god, she'd be nervous and everything. So I mean, how could they get over that? How could they become less? I don't want to say trigger happy, but less, anxious.
I think it would have to be a matter of containing a situation as long as you possibly can before you feel the need to use force. and being able to use force at an appropriate time, like being able to assess the situation accurately, you know, what's happening.
Okay.
You know, like, okay, obviously this situation is escalating, so I have to use force. Instead of, this guy might be kind of threatening me, or he might be getting in my face, so it's time to use force. I think it's a matter of attempting not to escalate until you know that you have to do something. And for all I know, they're already being trained in that way. Maybe when they get out in the field, they feel different about it. Because obviously I'm not a cop, so I can't speak.
Yeah, I can't either.
Cops' experiences. Maybe if I got out there, I'd be like, oh shit, this situation looks...
Yeah, like experience probably plays a huge role in that. Someone who's been doing it for 10 years is going to be a little more confident and comfortable than some, 1 year in. I think like more defensive gear would help, but at the same time, then they'd start looking more militarized, and that's a whole other, no matter which way we go, it's like
if they came in like heavy armor or something.
Yeah, exactly, with shields and like helmets and big
phaser gun, like that.
And so that would be its own problem.
Yeah, well, but I think the heightened fear is partly the problem, and then there's also the problem too many guns. And then, of course, there's too much crime. So it's all a cauldron shit.
It is. It's a mess. And that's kind of where I guess I get a lot of my material, if you will, is that it's like there's so many factors involved in that. And if you look at
that's my conclusion with like 90% of subjects. It's a fucking mess. And we're fucked. Totally. We're going to die. Well, we are all going to die. That's objectively true.
And so that's what I mean. It's like, I see Fox News and the conservative side, and they're blaming 100% on, thug life and criminal life. And then, the other side, they kind of blame 100% on, policing and so forth. And it's kind of like, like everything, I imagine the answer is somewhere in the middle. And it'll have to be parsed out a bit more.
People like the actual answer, but a lot of the time that doesn't really exist. So they just like something that stands in the place of the actual answer, and just put everything behind that. So just say, well, black people are just a problem, and it's all about the black people being just bad people, and that's the problem. So they get shot because they had it coming. And the other people say, well, the cops are psychotic and they're really vicious, and they're kind of racist, and they don't care about their jobs, and they just want to hurt people.
Yeah.
And it's like neither of those answers is actually what the fuck's going on.
And I'd say that's where like a lot of my perspective comes. It's like I don't even pay attention to the GOP side of things, like that perspective. I've always kind of looked at the Fox News and the conservative right as like almost a mockery of ideas. I've never been able to take them seriously. And so when the people that I've thought, like, I respect this opinion and I notice how biased it is. So those are the opinions that I tend to call out, and that usually starts creating a theme of, he just blames black people for everything. Well, it's like, no, maybe I need to, I guess, bash the side that I just obviously am against in my own mind.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that point of view, because like people see it as fence sitting, but it's not really fence sitting. It's just being like, shit's complex.
Yes. Yeah.
And people don't like that. They don't like the basic fact of reality, that it's complicated. No, that's a fucking fact. You cannot get past that.
If I could outrageously scream that this is the fucking problem, oh my God, then everybody starts paying attention, and some people hate you, some people like you, but either way, you're going to be popular.
Well, for something obvious and immediate, if you can identify the problem, it's really obvious that that's what it is.
Yeah.
But people are treating problems that are not obvious like that's the actual problem, and that there's no other factors involved. It's not like, I don't know, you ate a bunch of nails and it made your internal organs start bleeding, and you're like, what's the problem? Well, I ate all these nails. It's not as black and white as that.
definitely not. And that's what I think, like with the Islam thing, which is huge right now. It's like, yes, Islam is a bad idea. Like I don't know who. Oh, well, I do know.
Of course,
that
yeah. I'm not an Islamist. I don't believe in Islam.
But at the same, like you said, it's just like there are other factors. I mean, like I don't know how you can possibly deny that there are other factors at play in every. I mean, especially when you're talking about some global situation. It's just like you're talking about multiple countries, multiple cultures, multiple.
Well, but that's part of my criticism of, and I'm not going to say that it's fully exactly what they say, but the focus of the quote unquote new atheists is just primarily on the religion, which I don't have a problem with focusing on religion. I just have a problem with doing that to the detriment of other factors. And I also have a problem with only focusing on foreign policy, because it's clear that there are misogynistic and patriarchal elements in the religion, and conservative interpretations of the religion, which are also a problem.
That is my, like, one. Okay, so Sam Harris, I definitely I think he is a smart guy. He never seems to talk about the kind of like American military apparatus, When
it does, it's kind of favorably, it seems to me.
Yes. And it's like, I mean, I don't look at it as this just complete force for good. It's definitely made mistakes. And then he'll focus on intent. And I do agree. I think intent matters like crazy. But whether it was intended or not, mistakes.
I don't know if I agree with that.
What's that?
I don't know if I agree that intent matters, because I always think to myself, like, I mean, if intent really mattered, my ex-girlfriend wouldn't have broke up with me for being a dick. Because she should have known that I had really good intentions and I wasn't trying to hurt her. I think it matters in terms of looking at like the next step.
That's where I'll say I think it matters. So in
yes. Yeah.
In the results, no, like the results are the results, no matter what the intention was. But
well, like the example I came up with was like, say there was a robber that was running away, and I had a gun, and I was like, I'll shoot him, and then your daughter stepped in front of me, and I shot her in the face. It would be like, hey, I was trying to shoot the robber, though. And be like, yeah, but you still kind of shot my daughter in the face, so I don't think it's good enough.
And the results would be horrific. It would be like, oh, that would be a terrible.
I don't think the family would just forgive me. They'd be like, oh, he was trying to do something else. No big deal.
Yeah, and I'm not even considering the forgiveness aspect of it. I'm looking at it like, but does that mean that I can, not me personally, but should the community, should they trust you, after that? You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like,
important unless you don't believe that it's important to get any goodwill from Muslims at all. But I think it is. If you don't want to have so many fucking wars, you probably don't want them to hate you so much.
So what do you mean by that?
I mean, like when you blow up a hospital and shit, and then you say, oh, if we had perfect weapons, we wouldn't have blown up that hospital. I don't think that's going to create any goodwill with the Muslim population. They're still going to hate your guts.
Okay, I see.
And there will be more radicals and you have more wars. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. I can I agree with that. And with that, that's 1 second. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. My computer went to sleep.
Shit.
So with that, it's like, are you referring to that like Chomsky Harris?
Yeah, the perfect weapons thing.
Kind of thing they were talking about. I looked at that. It was like, dude, of course, that was horrible. That was horrible. And that's what I mean when I said with Harris, it's kind of like, dude, like you can't downplay that was a terrible thing that happened.
Interesting. Because you're such a Harris fan, I thought you would think that he made a good argument there, but you're saying you didn't think that.
No, I think he definitely downplayed the fact that was awful. Like you said, the results of that, no matter what your intention was, the results of that were horrible. That was like, dude, you definitely pissed a lot of people off, killed a lot of people, and then pissed a lot of other people off,
Yeah. Well, I think the intentions argument, like it is dependent on how the other person reacts. That's the important factor is what someone else thinks. It's not what you think. So if you do something really fucked up, the important thing in this equation is what other people think about it. Otherwise, you'd be able to like commit a crime and you're in the fucking court, and you're like, whoa, I murdered her because I was just trying to help her, I don't know, find Jesus. And they'll be like, okay.
You're right. I mean, it definitely matters what people think. But I'm just saying, like,
it's great then. We'll let you go. And you're like, oh,
if
sweet.
we could know intention, if we could like definitely know the intent, I think where that matters to me, I can't speak for anyone else. Like where that matters to me is what will they do next? You know, now once again, you know, this can't be all Muslims or anything like that, but just let's take like jihadists who are, you know, murdering, and you know, they're from this group here, and that group sent 4 people and they shot up whatever it was. And it's kind of like, so we know that this group here intends on doing things like that. So their future actions will likely have, you know, similar results because they will be intending to do the same thing. Whereas if, like, for example, that bombing, if we knew, and I'm not sure, I can't say that, you know, we knew that that was a hospital or anything like that. I have no idea what the intelligence was on that. But if just for the sake of this argument, if we could say we knew that they made a mistake and that's not what they were trying to do, if we knew that, then we could say our future actions aren't going to be as, you know, bad on purpose. You know what I mean? Like they might, you know, mistakes will always be made, but it's not like we are intending to hurt people. You know, we're intending to make things better.
It's totally valid if you're future focused.
What's that?
If you're future focused, it's totally valid, but I think it's undermined by the fact that America keeps making these mistakes.
You're right.
You've got to stop the cycle of mistakes before.
I do agree. I do agree. That's what I mean, and that's where I do break from Harris a bit, because I do think that mistakes are still mistakes, and like you said, the girlfriend is still dead. You know, I personally will not recover from that. You know, the community,
because like their daughter being alive is more important to them than that robber being killed.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like in that scenario, me, if that was my daughter, you were saying, I will always be hurt. I will never like you, you know, no matter what you do. It's like, I didn't mean to do it. It's like, yeah, but you killed my daughter. I just kind of will not like you ever again, you know. But, you know, the community will hopefully know that that was a mistake. And so,
like, you might get manslaughter instead of murder, or I don't know. What's it called? Reckless endangerment, something like that.
Yeah. But I understand where you're coming. I do understand what you're coming from. I think there's a difference between results and intent. I would say that's where it they kind of stray. They start dividing.
And we didn't get around to it yet. So we need to talk about that Maryam Namazie podcast with Sam Harris.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to move on to that.
I was super awkward. I was like, I felt awkward listening to that.
I don't know. The bit when she said that he was a bigot, the second time was kind of hilarious. He goes, so it sounds like you're kind of walking back the idea that I'm a bigot. And she's like, no, I'm not walking that back. And he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Speechless. I feel like I understand what he's saying when he's talking about profiling, and it's like a dirty word, and it sounds like, you know, prejudice. It sounds like discrimination. But in terms of kind of what he's saying, it's like, yeah, like I get that. Like we do that all the time. I do that, like personally.
But I think his anti-profiling concept makes no sense whatsoever, because profiling doesn't work because people find a way to get around it, and also arbitrarily picking people out based on their appearance doesn't work. So anti-profiling is just profiling with the word anti on it, and instead of profiling like races, now you're profiling old women and little kids in a negative sense to not be terrorists.
I won't be able to articulate that.
Reverse profiling or something. Yeah.
But this is kind of the gist that I got, and I'll just use the one from the podcast, but it's in his book, like really spells this out really well. And so basically, let's take like one problem, you know, because obviously the world is full of problems. So to not look at everybody is going to be a bad idea. But if we're looking for jihadists, you know, the CIA, they come into, you know, New York, or let's pick a smaller town, Baltimore, and they are specifically trying to find like a jihadist sect that they've heard has been in Baltimore. And so, you know, they're in there looking for them. The anti-profiling bit is kind of like, well, there's a group of Quakers that live at the edge of the city. You know, it's like, well, are they going to go look at the, you know, talk to the Quakers? Of course not. Like, why would you talk to the Quakers at least first? You know, at first you would want to talk to, you know, mosques and Muslim groups in the town to see if there's any information they have on the jihadists, because jihadists are by definition Muslim. And so I think that is what he's kind of saying with the anti-profiling. It's like, you know, if you run out of avenues, then yes, maybe go talk to the Quakers and see if they know anything.
Right. But the thing I'm wondering about that is, did he base this opinion on any research that he's done, or did he just make it up? Because when you talk to actual experts, they talk about, I forgot the exact acronym or the exact name for it, but there's an official process whereby they decide whether somebody's dodgy, and it's mostly based on behavior. It's also based on interviews, and it's based on looking into the past of these people and like gathering information, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know
exactly what it's called. Look it up there.
The thing that you know, and that was something that I kept wondering. I kept like wanting him to ask her that specific question. That's what I was saying. I was, you and I were talking. I was like, man, my palms were sweating as I was listening. I was like digging my fingernails into my palms, because he was asking.
She's got
her,
balls though. She's willing to say what she thinks. You know,
what she was saying was like, you know, we need to, if we're going to do this, we need to profile based on behavior. You know, based on like Islamism and jihadism not being Muslim. And so it's kind of like, well, what is that behavior then? Like, what is it that you would look at other than, I mean, if you're a CIA agent, you don't, you know, I don't think you would have some inner workings of, you know, the differences between Islamism and Islam or Muslim.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, so I wanted her to answer. Like,
well, profiling is not for Islamism or jihadists specifically. It's for like suspicious behavior. So it includes things like sweating or talking too much or talking on the phone nervously or looking around a lot, like that kind of shit. Pacing up and down, putting your bag somewhere and then picking up your bag again and then putting it down again. And people
well, like the Baltimore situation. If the CIA had gotten like word that there was a, you know, Islamist group in Baltimore, like what would you recommend in, you know, against, you know, that wouldn't be profiling in order to accomplish?
But you can obviously profile a specific group. So I mean, if you are aware of a specific group, then you can try to find out things that are identifiable from that group. And I think the problem with doing that for Muslims as a whole is the whole 1.6 billion thing, and that there's too many of them. But part of the way that they look at these things is they see what countries these people have been visiting. If you've been visiting hotspots around the world, like you've been to Yemen and you've been to, I don't know, fucking drawing a blank, fucking Saudi Arabia, because it's just the one everyone knows, Pakistan, etc. That is a bit of a red flag. And so they take you aside and they ask you questions. And if you seem like your answers aren't really stacking up and you're acting rather strange, they might not let you on the plane.
But I think in that case, honestly, you would agree with Harris, because I think that's what he's saying in terms of the anti-profiling, which is you're going to leave out, you know, the Muslim family that has been living there for generations and.
Oh, but not if the dad or the mom or somebody is acting really weird, then you'd be like, well, something's fucked up here.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, but what I mean, it's like you're not going to look at those that aren't acting weird. You know what I mean? And I think that's what he means when he's saying the anti-profiling bit. It's like you know, let's not waste time on people that aren't associated or aren't, like you said, carrying these behaviors around. You know, let's look at the people that are doing these things and focus our time on them. And instead of just pulling over every random person on the street and saying, hey, you know, we need to check your phone records and see how shifty you are.
Yeah. But do you think Harris based this idea on any particular research of any kind? Maybe he did, and I haven't seen his references or something.
Yeah, not that I can find. No, not that I can find.
That's what seems a bit weird about it. It seems like he got a hunch that this would work. He's just like,
yeah,
you know what? I think this might work. So I'll just sort of say this is the right thing to do.
And I do too, and I can see like where it comes from, just even in like what we're saying, which is kind of like, you're not going to look at the people who are just Muslim and have been living there. You're going to look at those that have the characteristics that we're looking for, and in doing so, you're you know, quote unquote anti-profiling by leaving out those who don't have those characteristics. And I think that is, you know, like I said, I might be mistaken, but I think that's what he's talking about in that.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I'm just going to stick with what the security experts say, and maybe one day they'll figure out something that is more effective than what they currently think.
Yeah, I doubt that. I doubt any of this is going to be put into procedure either way.
So, I mean, that's it. Like Sam is kind of stirring the whole. I was going to say pot, but for some reason that sounded wrong. But yeah, stirring the whole situation. How the fuck do you stir a situation? My metaphors are off today.
Man, I gotta. If you are for anybody like that's interested in that idea, profiling, hunches, glances, read this book. It's by Malcolm Gladwell. It's called Blink, and it is awesome, man. It's all about that. It's all about just hunches and people who have you know, lots of experience, and they talk about like, you know, food tasters, sculpture, you know, examiners, and even like soldiers in combat. And they talk about how they develop these just super quick like instincts on things, and it makes them amazing at, honestly, like profiling might not be the right word, but hunches would be.
Is he a behavioral psychologist?
Malcolm Gladwell?
Yeah.
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, he's definitely in the field of psychology. I'm not sure if it's behavioral.
Right. Yeah, because I think behaviorism would probably be the best field for profilers when I think about it.
Yeah, it is. It is a great field. I worked with the way actually I learned about that book is
Pavlov and Skinner.
Yeah, and then they started doing like the field that I was working in this research lab studying like facial expressions, and that's where the professor, the doctor of that lab, he's the one that gave me the book, and it was like, holy shit, man, that book is amazing. It was the most interesting thing for a long time that I'd read, and you know, it was just like you were saying, kind of like twitchy eyebrows or lips or noses, and like picking up the little facial expression and facial cues, and so it was kind of like,
makes me picture like a scene from a movie. The guy's trying to walk through security and he's just sweating heaps and his eyebrows are twitching.
Yeah,
the guy's like, hey man, why are your eyebrows twitching? No reason.
Yeah,
I'm not a terrorist.
In my suitcase, coming back from Amsterdam, just trying to get back home.
There's nothing there. I just have twitchy eyebrows, man. This is fucking ableism. But yeah, okay. So, I mean, I think I'll get going in a second. But the last thing I just wanted to talk about was, do you think Maryam was being rude in that discussion?
I think she was being evasive. I don't necessarily think she was being rude. I mean, you get into debates like that, and I think that she came into it disagreeing with Harris from like prior statements that he's made and people that he'd aligned himself with. And so I think that she didn't like his outlook from the beginning. And so I think there were times that they actually did agree. And Harris would even say like, hey, I think we agree here. And she would say like, no, you know, like, no, we don't.
It seemed to me she took that as condescending. That somebody is telling her that she agrees with him when she feels like she's not. So I think she took that as kind of an insult. Like,
I mean, I can understand that, but it was just from the ideas I was hearing both of them say, it was like, I see where they line up. Like, I see what he's saying and she's saying, and they seem to have like a common ground, even if it's from a different perspective. And so he was like, no, I think, I think we agree here. And, she'd say no. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, if she really did feel like, no, like what you're saying is something I don't believe in. But then when she would be pressed on it, it was kind of like, I saw her doing the like more backpedaling, where it was like, now she's trying to explain why she doesn't agree, and even going back on some things that she'd already said. And it was like, well, wait a second.
Well, I think the difficulty with that conversation is Maryam was saying a lot of things in the positive, and
Yeah.
Harris was just saying a lot of things in the negative. Like, no, I don't think that. I don't think that. Like, that's not true. I don't think that. Maryam was saying, I think this, I think this, I think this. And then Harris would be like, we agree. And then she'd be like, no, we don't agree. And then Harris would never sort of get the chance to clarify why it is they agree. He never really explained how it was they agreed.
Yeah.
So it just seemed like a miscommunication, like just sort of
It was that's what made me feel so awkward. It was a lot of like, but,
yeah,
stop interrupting. You're interrupting. Let me finish. And it was just kind of like, oh my God.
But I think with Harris as a whole, I don't know if he's really explained in a satisfactory way how his whole national security state or situation would work. And I think Maryam gave a very clear view of what she thinks. But in the like sort of dynamics of that conversation, she came off seeming, I don't know, kind of like on the attack, and people didn't like that.
And you know what? I thought the same with like him and Chomsky, and it was just like, I don't think Chomsky's a dick just because of that conversation.
I think he got pissed off. He got a bit grumpy. He's a grumpy old man.
Yeah, exactly. He's super old right now, so let's give him a break. But I just I think that is the one place that I would like him to elaborate a bit more, is like, dude, you focus on Islam, great topic, great place to focus. I see no problems there. I agree pretty much across the board with the things that he says on that issue. But, like we were saying, there are other factors at play. And one major factor is just military occupation and like you were saying, setting up just little, interim governments for a period of time in places that have been civil warring for, millennia. And it's kind of like, so yeah, it's like, how do you do that? Like, what's your take? I mean, you know what I mean?
The government, a lot of the time, the government you set up does not satisfy a ridiculous proportion of the population who believes that they're being sidelined.
Yeah,
basically.
I would feel that way. I would feel that way 100% if someone came in and did that to me. And so that's what I would like him to say, that, like, give a bit more on, okay, like, here's your take on Islam. I understand. What's your take on how to handle the situation we're in right now? Politically, from our end, not from their end, but from our end.
Well, he could write a post that was like, how I would handle security, and just lay it out.
Yes.
Because he talked about like individual ideas, but he's never really put forth a kind of structure of like how the fuck that would work.
Yeah. And I think go ahead.
Maybe some security experts would show up later and shit on him about it. So maybe he doesn't want to. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was like. I can understand that he's an expert in the things that he's been studying and researching, and so he knows a lot about this topic alone or something, and so that's what he's going to talk about, and he's going to leave the other topics to the people that know more about them. And so I can understand that, because I do that. I don't know much about the Islam situation, so I don't tend to talk about it all that much, and that's just because other people that are talking about it know way more than I do. And it's like, so if you want an opinion, it's like, go to them. They have a better one than I do.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's good, because I think too many people are like self-proclaimed experts.
Yeah.
On issues that they're just not experts on, but you have to sit there and listen to them lecture you about how much of an expert they are. And you're like, okay, I guess you know everything, even though I know you don't.
Yes.
But all good.
I agree. And that's why, I mean, I put a quick thing up like on feminism, and it's just like, man, I don't know shit about feminism, to be honest. Like, I'm not a feminist. I'm not an anti-feminist either. I don't pay attention much to it. So my opinion on this just holds no water, and I quickly just took it down, erased it. It was like, that's no good.
Well, you still have an opinion though, so you could work your way up to making a video that you feel satisfied.
Oh, yeah. I do want to. I want to do that. I'm kind of like, even now, like looking more into it so I can kind of figure out where I'm at in that spectrum.
You can make a video on anything. You just don't pretend that you're an expert, and then you can have any fucking opinion you want. I think that's the whole point of the internet. That's the whole point of YouTube, you know.
And that's what I think the problem was. Is like I don't agree with it, but then I was running into places where it was kind of like, yeah, but I guess I don't really side with this either, you know. And it was kind of like, so the end of it was basically like, you know, I'm nowhere on this.
Well, I think one day both of us will figure out how to just take one point of view and just ram it home, and that's just that's the one thing.
I'm hoping so.
Find that.
Well, I see a lot of people that like you were saying, they kind of have maybe some people they look up to that hold a certain opinion, and so they make videos, and it's like almost like a false outrage, or you know, it's just kind of, I don't want to say copycatting, but it's just like they're, you know, yeah, this is bullshit, and they're spouting off about it. And it's just kind of like, man, I don't hear anything in there that's really like resonating. And
like something they think themselves, like their own opinion.
Yeah.
You know, rather than just regurgitating people that you think are cool, which is pretty easy to do.
And that, you know, that I see that a lot. And it's like, that's what I try to avoid doing that myself, because it's like, there's nothing really, like you said, it's just like I'm watching and I'm not really gaining anything from it.
Yeah. So your goal is 200 subscribers.
Yeah. It was set it on two. Honestly, I started with like, I swear to God, like I started with like no goal. It was just like, I'm going to rant about some shit. I like to talk a lot. So I'm going to do that and then just upload it. And people, you know, paid attention. I was like super honored, and it was super cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think at a certain point I will reach 0.01% of like The Amazing Atheist or something.
Yeah.
You know, just totally stoked.
And yeah, and that, you know, honestly, it's like that it is awesome, like, you know, see subscribers and stuff. And I've kind of like never really thought of that as being like, that's why I'm in this, is to get a bunch of people listening to me. Honestly, I enjoy the, you know, people that I've gotten to meet and talk to. And this is like my first official hangout right now. So right now,
I'm going to make you look like shit, but.
What's that?
I'm going to edit it to make you look like shit.
Thank you.
But shit.
Hey, you know, even bad publicity, you know what they say about it.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but I think it's super cool. You know, a lot of stuff. I think a lot of unwritten rules I need to learn.
Yeah. I don't know what the rules are for YouTube, except to just spout off.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, see who believes you're out of bullshit enough to follow you.
You are right, man. The more that I've gotten into it, the more that I've actually watched like some really big YouTubers. I mean, there was like, you know, oh man, I can't even think of who they were, but they were just like, it was like, this shit is so popular and it is ridiculous. And it was something like the dude just like makes out with girls or something like that. And it was just like,
really?
What the fuck? And yeah, he was huge. It's kind of
they do that fucking like pickup artist shit where they just test out various lines on random women. So they just go up to them and say a line. That shit has crazy amount of views. And like,
I guess there's a lot of guys that really need to learn how to do that, but I don't think that's something you can necessarily learn. That's
half the time they kind of joke videos because they say shit that's offensive on purpose, and then like the chick slaps them or something.
I was seeing, you know, that like Roosh V guy. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Man, like that dude. I mean, he's super. I can see why he's popular, but it's just like, oh my god, that guy's a dick.
His pickup ideas seem ridiculous. Like he spent half an hour explaining how to stand at the bar next to the girl. And I just thought my advice would be, you've got two legs, use them to walk
Yeah.
And then fucking stand somewhere, you piece of shit.
Yeah. Both of them at the same time on the ground.
Yeah. We took half an hour explaining, like, maybe you should go over here, and you should go here, and you should sit here, and I think you're overthinking this.
If you're planning that out that much, oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know
Your 90-degree angle.
But
God, it's incredible that rape lover has even got any women. But
yeah, I mean, that's definitely not the field that I'm interested in. So, I can watch it, and I don't know.
I'm gonna transition into a pickup artist channel.
Right. I'll do the same. I'll be the most unsuccessful pickup artist on YouTube. That'll probably be popular. Like,
don't tell them you live in your mother's basement.
Yeah, I mean, that would, I guarantee that would take off. Ready? It's like just rejected guy, go into bars, get rejected, painfully rejected, and people
lose a guy, pick up skills.
So
please don't hate me.
Trash of YouTube.
I live a sad life. Please sleep with me. I'm so lonely.
Film that, dude. I guarantee your views will jump. They will go crazy.
If you'd like to donate to charity, have sex with me.
Donate to my Patreon.
Exactly.
Watch me fail. But anyways, but yeah, man. But like you were saying, it's late here. I know you're across the world. It's just getting started over there. But I do have to jump off here myself.
So good. Yeah, I think we've covered all the subjects.
Yeah. There's a few honestly like to talk to you about, but
just do another hangout in the future. It's all good.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice. Okay, so No More Dogma. Subscribe to him so he can have his 200 subscriber party. Pretty epic stuff.
Thank you very much, man. Thanks for chatting with me.
No worries. Yeah, and if you want to mirror it on your channel, you can just download it and upload it onto your one.
Will do.
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.